Yeah, the session we just had was focused really, you could say, on data and what you can do with it when you have it, or when you make the data and then what you can do with it, as Rob showed. In terms of AI applications, in terms of autonomous operation on site, in terms of bringing many team members together. So in my mind, a data-driven management of projects is certainly one of the key emerging technologies these days. But the other, I would say, is the whole space of virtual, augmented, extended range of realities. And that's the focus of this session, because I think that that's where we can really bring the expertise of and insights from many different stakeholders together. And I have to say, if you had asked me after my first VR experience in 1998, well, actually, no, wrong, 1996. Anyway, if you had asked me about after my first, in 10 years, this will be everywhere, because we saw huge value then. And I know there is still a huge value today, but now it does seem to be that these applications are getting much more widespread. So to kick off this session, please welcome Rashi from Strivr.
Thank you. Hi, how's everyone doing? All right, great. My name is Rashi Singhania. I am the head of growth at a company called Strivr. And I'm here to talk about how we are revolutionizing enterprise learning with the use of VR applications. But before I get started, I have two fun things for y'all. With a show of hands, can y'all tell me how many people here, barring the ones who outside took a demo, has ever been inside a VR headset? Wow, a lot of you, great. And has that usually always been for some sort of a gaming experience? No? Okay. Good, okay. We have a few demo headsets for you all here for the kind of work we're doing. It's one thing to come up on stage and talk about what we're doing and how we're doing. It's a completely different thing to go and experience it. So I have some esteemed colleagues with me here today. We're right down the hallway here. We have set up a station with a couple of cool VR headsets and some actual demo of use cases of how we use this with different enterprise companies. Sure, are very welcome to go and try that out in the lunch break. And with that, I'm going to quickly get started. How we're doing enterprise training with VR. If you can go to the next slide, please. Strivr is the only enterprise VR platform today in the world that has scaled VR across thousands of locations, nearly 30,000 devices, and over 1.6 million sessions. And I want you to take a minute and think about that. I know you kind of mentioned right at the beginning that is there a value in it and how many people are using it, and surprisingly, it's become a lot more mainstream. And it's not just gaming, as a lot of people came up and asked us. It's not just gaming. It has real-world applications. And I'm going to speak to how this is also applied in construction design as well. Yeah? A little bit of fun story. Strivr started right here at Stanford. Our founder and CEO, Derek Belch, was an assistant coach here teaching college football to a bunch of people and athletes, and was kind of thinking of writing a thesis on how he can train better. And a really quick thing on ethos on training athletes is repeatability. The more you repeat, the more you understand how you want to win and get efficient and engage better, and you're able to take that training off the field, on the field, and show value. So he collaborated and was advised by Jeremy Billinson, who's actually the head of VR labs here at Stanford, more than 15 years, eminent personality in the field of VR research and spatial design. He's also one of the lead academic researchers in this space and an advisor to the company. So a lot of the theory and design that we use is actually founded here, right here at Stanford. We have over 1 million learners in the US and Canada across a whole different enterprise companies. So the kind of companies we work with is Fortune 500 companies who have more than 10,000 employees. We are across financial services, banking, insurance, logistics, retail, supermarkets, grocers, and the like. Healthcare is something we're recently tapping into, and Advent Health is one of our most recent customers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about in the next 10, 15 minutes about what we're specifically doing with them and what are those use cases that I kind of alluded to. Our vision at Strivr is super simple. We want to elevate performance through immersive experiences. One thing Derek talks a lot about is how VR is engagement and visualization on steroids. And one of the most biggest examples he gives, which I think that really resonates with me, is a 2,000-year-old quote that he likes to talk about Confucius, who said, "I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, but I do and I understand. And so by doing, we learn, and we see huge impact on how that learning can be changed. I want to set a quick context on how learning has traditionally been in the enterprise space. If you all remember, there's old school classic, get into a classroom, engage with your tutor or the person who's teaching you, talk to your fellow students, how you're learning, and talking and engaging. That's fantastic from an engagement standpoint, but there have been limitations on how we track data and understand how people are learning, and applying that to behavioral science and be able to predict how we can get better outcomes. Then came e-learning modules. If you've ever kind of worked in a corporate firm where you have been onboarded with e-learning videos to see click, 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 go, and submit, and done. That's the one which is also, it's engaging, you can track some amount of data, but there also is limitations on how you get engaged. I know I have done, submitted, I'm onboarded into this new company. And so we really set out to take some of these learnings on how VR has an application in training athletes and how they bring their A game onto the field to enterprise learning. And so with that, I'm going to talk about some of the most critical use cases that we've seen across these industries. Simply put, if I were to boil this down, operational efficiency, health and safety, customer service, and interpersonal skills is where we kind of play ground in. Hard skills and soft skills both have applications in VR. On the soft skills side, the kind of companies we've worked with, we've created content modules for VR where there's difficult conversations, managers giving feedback to their employees. But instead of doing it on the ground and kind of stumbling on your words and the choice of words you use and how you make that employee feel, simulation inside a VR headset and learning that and practicing it and understanding sentiment is very big. And that's what VR helps to solve. DE&I, inclusivity, is a huge theme right now. Most companies, most organizations, institutions, academic institutions are figuring out how to do that better and faster, and VR simulation is another one for it. On the hard skills side, and this is where the flight simulator analogy I think is really helpful to understand, is any kind of flight simulation where you're trying to learn how to fly the plane without actually being on the plane first is what VR tends to solve. And VR, as Derek Belch would tell you right now, we are the flight simulator for all these different enterprise kind of companies. In terms of health and safety, I want to kind of just highlight that and operational efficiency because that has use cases and applications in construction. Strivr currently mostly works with enterprise companies and is not actively working with a lot of companies in the construction space, though we've had a couple of customers who worked on it. United Rentals is one of the companies in this space that we worked with, and if you're curious, sure, I would invite you to go to strivr.com, which is our website, and there's a lot of more detail that we've talked about how we've helped some of these companies. But it's not just kind of training and learning, but how does that kind of extrapolate into the value and the impact that we see? And there are three core pillars of impact that we usually see. One is engagement. It's a highly, highly immersive experience. Once you're inside that VR headset and you're seeing a construction space, you're seeing what that on-site hazardous, heavy equipment, expensive equipment is kind of laid out without actually having to go on site. And this kind of really kind of got its firepower more towards COVID and pandemic when people really couldn't go to the space and get that training. PowerPoint presentations and slides kind of started to become less effective, and VR simulations became more effective. And that's how we've kind of helped different companies in this space to try and simulate those real-world examples. Preparing for critical situations, we have helped a number of different companies with this. Health and safety is a huge kind of top of mind for a lot of companies, both in construction, but also in the retail spaces and banking spaces. People who live in the US have heard a lot about very, very challenging situations and critical situations of armed robbery and attack. Verizon is one of our customers that we worked very closely with, and we kind of worked with them to figure out how can we prepare their employees to respond to such critical situations and have that simulation without actually having to be on the storefront. We all know that Verizon's and the AT&T's of the world has very expensive equipment on their storefronts, and these employers care about their employees, and they don't just want them to give a PowerPoint presentation and say, hey, here, this is how you go, be safe when you have to respond to a situation like that. And so they invested in VR modulations with us, and I'm going to talk about some of those results that we saw from some of these trainings. Sprouts Supermarket is also one of our customers, and they've seen an 81% reduction in onboarding time. So I think they went from 4 hours of training to about 45 minutes. What does that really mean? Does that really mean that you onboard an employee and that person gets to showing value and working on the ground really quickly? Yes. But from a business perspective, what that really means is reduction in cost. you now have higher revenue being generated from those employees much faster than you'd spend probably weeks and hours training them. Walmart also saw 96% of cost savings. And when we started with Walmart, we did one pilot for them back in, I think, 2016 or 17, with one learning academy at Walmart. By the time Walmart saw value of it, we had scaled across 4,500 locations across the United States. And from what I've heard, they've had about 17,000 Oculus headsets in their stores today, and this is one of their primary modalities of training. I also want to kind of talk a little bit about healthcare to kind of show you how we expand into different categories. It's not just retail and financial institutions. Advent Health is one of our customers, and we are engaged with them in several different modules, most of them being for nurses training and for surgeons training, to create simulations for them and teaching them real-world scenarios before actually having to kind of face them and be more prepared for it. So I want to talk a little bit about enterprise. Strivr as a solution is completely built for the enterprise, and we have a platform, and we have 3 pillars that we mostly speak about. The first pillar is content management and device management. As you can imagine, for training employees, you have a whole lot of headsets, it's hardware, and there's also a software component to it, and it's the content component to it. And one of the ways, or one of the biggest challenges an enterprise faces is how do you scale this? It's great to get a couple of headsets for an event like this and share it with 50, 100 people in a room. It's a completely different ballgame when you have to scale that across 50,000 or more employees across 4,000 plus locations in anywhere in the world. And so Strivr solves for that. We are a partner to enterprise by being able to scale that. We have a portal, which is our proprietary technology, and most employers can see how many headsets have been deployed, which locations they've been deployed in, what content is being consumed. Not just that, one of the biggest things that differentiates us from anyone else in the market today is the data science that we back this up with. We have a team of data scientists who analyze anywhere between 100 to 1,000 data points within a headset. So we not only track how many locations and how many content pieces and how many devices, we're also able to go ahead and track what is the behavior of that learner in that headset. How did they respond? How many test questions were they able to answer? What happened when they were not able to answer? How many minutes did they take to answer something? And so on and so forth. All of that data is something that we can track at a unique learner perspective and then distill that into actual outcomes and predictability to the employers and hand that over to the learning academy and the people behind those modules and create that predictability for them. This is the platform that I was talking about, where we have 3 main components of it. Part of it is the content creation. Now, you want to think about how do you create those modules in VR. It does take a lot. And Strivr started out doing custom modules for different customers. Reason being that the application that a Walmart would have would be wildly different from what Advent Health would have. We are now at a point where we're scaling, and there's a lot more generic content out there and a library out there that customers can come to and buy from us. But we also do semi-custom and custom content for large enterprises. The data science piece is the one that I think is the most fascinating piece that even we've seen. The one thing I'm going to leave you with on the data science piece is this: making decisions and understanding how people learn, how we can actually impact behavioral change, and how can we actually get people to be more engaged and have recall for the knowledge that we're trying to give them is all powered by the way we have little data points that tell us how to make that decision, where is the gap, what should be the next module, and how should we be teaching our learners. And I think we'd all agree that different people learn differently. A lot of people are visual learners, a lot of people are experiential learners, and a lot of people want to kind of go back in their own study hall and study their own way. And I think that's what VR is trying to do, and that's the value that VR is trying to show. We're also a very big enterprise partner, and I want to speak to what that really means. An enterprise means we're at any point in time working with more than 10,000 employees at a time. And so there's a big component of services that comes into how do we make any customer successful with VR. And so it's not just giving you the platform, it's not just these fancy headsets that we're shipping out, and it's not just the content that we're helping develop for you. It's also this entire strategic piece of sitting down with the Bank of America, our customer, sitting down with Walmart, sitting down with Sprouts and saying, what are your learning objectives? What are your learning outcomes that you are challenged with today? How can we create a custom content for you, and how do we scale that across different employees around your organization. So we've distilled this down to a 7-step process of how we partner with customers. So it's once we sign the deal, we know we have a customer, we are an end-to-end partner for them to make sure that they can get value from this. They're able to take some of the data that our data science team can put in front of them and understand what kind of predictability outcome and the next set of modules we should be creating for them. That's it. That was my presentation. Easy breezy.